But we do want to welcome everybody to this Lunch and Learn, and we appreciate everybody joining us. Steve, do you want to announce our sponsors and platinum sponsors and all that good stuff?
Sure. We'd like to introduce our platinum members, thank them for supporting the Chamber. Cook Walden Davis Funeral Home, City of Georgetown, Georgetown Behavioral Health Institute, Georgetown Rail Equipment Company, Radiation Detection Company, St. David's Georgetown Hospital, and the Wesleyan. And
Yay.
Thank you all for supporting the Chamber. We have a sponsor today, and our sponsor is right there next to me on the board that I look at. It's Carol from Sky Luxury Senior Living. As she says, it's blue sky. So welcome, Carol.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
The Zoom floor is yours.
Well, I just want to introduce Sky. If you've never had the opportunity to come and visit our property, you're more than welcome to come. Just let me know and we'll schedule lunch and I'll give you a tour, and you really are missing out if you haven't seen what we have to offer. Sky is independent living. I also say that we're very full of love. Our community is a property that when you step in, you see that our community loves one another. It's very family friendly. It is independent living, but with that, people can age in place here. It's their forever home, so they can bring in whatever kind of care that they would need moving forward. And I have the privilege of living on property. I am the first responder after hours. So this is my home and where I work, and it's the greatest thing ever. Our food, we're known for our food and our community and our staff, but our food is like 5-star restaurant quality. And our chefs work very, very hard. We just got our new menu preview for next week. Every Monday through Friday is a new menu. And then every weekend is a new menu for brunch. And so it's never boring. You don't get the same thing twice, hardly ever, even if you like it. And so, you know, special, he'll try to squeeze it in at another time, but just fabulous food, farm to table, fresh as much as possible. We create as much on our own as we can. We include things like laundry and facility linens for them as well, and do housekeeping for our residents. And we have a full-time activities director, full-time lifestyle director, fitness directors. So they're doing in the upwards of 4 and 5 different activities for our residents every single day. As I mentioned, right now they're playing Zoom, bingo, so having a lot of fun with that. We do big parties. We do a lot of events for our residents. We also take them places for fun happy hours and also for dinner and lunches and museum trips. We also include happy hour 5 times a week. So there's a lot of fun for our residents here. We are still seeing people moving virtually. So we do a lot of virtual tours. I've done 2 this week. We had one that I did on Monday and they moved in yesterday. So people are still out there moving and shaking, and it doesn't matter what time of year it is or what's going on with our economy because of the virus. It's unfortunate, but it is, life still moves forward for most people. And so Sky is a part of that partnership, is just what I love to do. I love to build relationships with our community and with our community of businesses. I like to be that connector, that conduit. So part of what I choose to do here at Sky is to find people that connect well with our residents and build those relationships for their tool belt. So they have all the tools they need when they might need them, instead of wondering what to do when they run into a crisis and need additional help. So again, I would love to have any and all of you come and visit us and enjoy our food, enjoy our friendship and our community, and would love for you to send us anyone that's looking for a fabulous place to live.
Thank you. And what's your address?
We are 11350 Hero Way West in Leander.
All right. And
anybody have any questions or anything you might want to throw at me?
Anybody? You can put it in the chat box or raise your hand. I can't see everyone. We're going to do quick introductions, so don't take a lot of time. And I'm Steve Farnham for Nomads Travel. I'll hand it off to my partner, Kat, and then Allison will put your name in the chat box and you will be up in that order.
Hi, I am Kat with your Georgetown Family YMCA.
Says Kent, Aaron, and Ann. Kent Cummings, and then Aaron, and then Ann.
Ed Cummins, Magic Hotline, and proud grandpa to the Sweet Lemon, and soon, I guess, Uncle Kent for the City Post.
Everyone. I'm the Summer Youth Employment Program Coordinator for the Georgetown Project, and I just started a few months ago. So any free cookies, tips that you want to throw my way, just let me know.
Hi, Ann Kaiser, Ambassador at the Chamber and representative with Mockingbird Lane Wedding and Events.
All right, next up is Brian.
No. Next, I'd go next, Kat.
You go next?
No, I'd say go to the next part. I think Brian's muted.
Oh,
He might be
sorry.
doing something else.
Yeah. Oh, I was like, it doesn't say Jim. Diana and then Jared.
Hi, everyone. This is Diana Gonzalez. I work at PEC. I work with Jared. I am happy to be here. Thank you.
Jared Fields, Pronounced Electric Cooperative. I work with Diana.
Awesome. Welcome. All right, Nate, Nick, and then Michelle.
Good morning or good afternoon, 6 minutes after afternoon. Name is Nate Jones with Georgetown Behavioral Health Institute. Thanks for having me.
Okay, Nick.
Good afternoon. Nick Leschke with Georgetown Living.
Hi, Nick.
Hi.
And then Michelle. Okay, and then Michelle and Brian, we'll come back to you guys at the end if you can hear us, and then let's hear from our chamber staff. So we'll go Allison, Kayleen, and then Zelinda and everybody else.
Hi everyone, I'm Allison McKee. I'm the Director of the Program.
Hi, my name is Kayleen Sullen. I'm the Events and Engagement Coordinator.
Hi everybody, I'm Zelinda Richards, your Membership Manager.
And then Miss Linda, there you are.
She's muted,
darling.
Go to Brian.
Brian, are you there?
I'm here. Brian Jameson, Allstate Insurance, also a board member for the Chamber.
Awesome. How about you, Mr. Ron? We didn't get to hear from you.
That's okay. Ron Garland, Chamber Ambassador and the Rotary Club of Georgetown.
And then Miss Linda, we can hear you now.
Sorry about that. I'm Information Specialist. Welcome to everybody.
Awesome.
And Ben has just joined us.
Okay.
Ben, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, Ben Lake. I have an IT support and computer repair business here in Georgetown and have for 4 years or so, and I'm a proud chamber member.
Hey, Ben.
Oh,
Okay.
hey.
Yeah, if we don't have did we miss anybody? If you didn't get a
Stephanie.
Stephanie, I'm having to move through screens.
Hi guys, Stephanie Featherstone, local State Farm insurance agent. Glad to be here. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas. Thank you. Okay. Is that everybody, Steve and Allison?
I think so. Michelle, did you want to try again? I don't think we could hear you.
Can you hear me now? Okay, I'm Michelle Bubello with our bank. I'm a chamber ambassador and I work in the mortgage department at our bank.
Wonderful. Well, we have a terrific program scheduled for today. We get to hear from our very own President and CEO of the Georgetown Chamber, Mr. Jim Johnson. And he has brought along with him Dr. McGuire, a retired lieutenant colonel that's currently the chief executive officer of the Quality Texas Foundation. And he is covering some of the most beautiful land in the country, partially because I'm from Missouri. So I think it's great. You go to Missouri, and who doesn't love Puerto Rico? So Jim, I know you guys have got a lot of great content for us, and I'd love to leave some time for questions. So without further ado, I'm going to turn the meeting over to you, sir.
Thank you, Kat. Perfect. There's that moment where you share your screen, you say, I hope people can see it. And I look at Steve's shaking his head. So that's always a good sign. Guys, Jim Johnson, President and CEO here at the Georgetown Chamber of Commerce. And I'm going to talk, as you can see on the screen, about millennial leadership. You know, the Chamber has had speakers come in before and talk about generations and the different skill sets with it and what we see in the different generations currently in the workplace. But the Lunch and Learn Committee came together and said, let's talk a little bit about millennials and what we're seeing actually in millennial leadership. And because as you look at the generation, you're going to notice that millennials are in leadership roles here in our community. Our economic development director, your chamber president, our events and engagement coordinator at the chamber who says she's not a millennial. We are millennials and we are a part of your workforce. And I just want to dive into some of the areas that you'll see with millennial leadership. I'll describe a little bit of the generations. I'll do it briefly because we've all heard those definitions. And I'll spend a little time on the myths of millennials in our community, at least coming from my opinion, and then turn it over to Dr. Matt McGuire, who Quality Texas Foundation is a organization truly focused on the Baldrige process. If you've never done that, never been a part of that, man, it is enlightening for your organization and really screams organizational excellence. So perfect. Hugh Brown, a Baldrige award-winning organization, taught me years ago, you never do a presentation without at least summarizing your organization. And many of y'all have heard me speak, and I go into our mission and I go into different areas, but I was probably the shortest I've ever talked about the chamber is this slide. We've been here since 1947. Our mission is to facilitate your economic success for our community through advocacy, education, and collaboration, or simply put, we exist to help business. We've been doing that for many years, and we provide opportunities for businesses to grow and gain visibility. If you need more information, come see me later, come to a membership orientation, and we'll dive into that. But I want to stress that part of this conversation is more focused on the millennial business leaders. Everyone is part of a generation, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you are a leader within that generation. So when we snapshot the generations that are out there, I bet if you go online, and Dr. Mack and I were talking a little bit, you can find different age groups. You could say millennials start in 79, 83, 85, just to push it past a little bit year. But this gives you a ballpark picture for the area that we are using today when I talk about the 4 generations area. I'm not getting into generation Y, that are more generation Z, the generation after millennials, but there is that generation, and even generation A, as some people are calling it, is starting to enter, are going to be our next area entering the workforce. So how do you define these different generations? And there's a lot of different ways that you can use tools to describe it. Some people use born date. Some people use screen content. So you could say the silent generation is cinema, and then you go TV and you move to VCR in every area. But it's Christmas season and it's toy season. So when I look at the different generations, and this research comes from the McRiddle Group out of our good friends in the country of Australia, they say you can look at iconic periods with each generation. And these are the iconic toys of our 4 different generations that are here. You have I'd say rollerblades, but you have skates for the silent generation, the Frisbee for the 56 to 64. And then you have the Rubik's Cube for Generation X. And millennials, it's not just a bike, but a BMX bike. You know, that little risk-taking generation is starting to get in there. You could even look at areas that are, I'd say, social markers, World War II for the silent generation, the moon landing for boomers, the stock market crash for Generation X, and millennials would be 9/11 as you look at that. Or we could even look at, sticking with toys, again, how they get their music, how they're defined with that. You have record players, It's not necessarily a cassette for 46 the boomers, but you can look at that as any sort of portable music device, 8-track area like that. Generation X moving to the Walkman area, and millennials sliding into the iPod area. But when we talk about the timeline and we look out there, we could go to Webster's dictionary and find a definition. But I really can't remember the last time I went to Webster's dictionary when I really need to define something. And I imagine a lot of y'all use Google right now to define certain areas. And so you go to Google and you type in millennials and you plug it in, one of the first images that you normally see is what you're seeing on your screen. It's just a picture of them, tech, coffee shop, different clothes, great diversity. But today's about millennial leaders. And if you just add that word, it starts to dive into a different area. It doesn't just show the coffee, it shows a similar diversity that we're seeing, but you're starting to see that collaboration and that ability for them to guide others, which we'll get into a little bit later. But they are part of the workforce right now. Millennials make up 12% of the US population, 39 million, nearly 40 million millennials. Well, let's look at that. So you're saying, okay, they're only 12% of our population in the US, but they make up 81% of the millennials are currently participating in the workforce. So they're in our workforce and they're part of it. And if you look around this call even, you'll see many millennials that are part of our workforce. But again, leadership and talking about that. And a lot of times when we hear millennials, we look at the style of saying they just want to be the boss. They want to be in charge. And I always use the example of the back of the check versus the front of the check. A leader in some people's minds is the person that is signing the front of the check. They're the person that's making the decision. They're the ones cutting the payroll versus the person that's signing the back of the check or endorsing a check and working for that. And that ages me because I know many people don't get a hard payroll check anymore. It's direct deposited into your account. So if we go with the virtual, it's the person authorizing the direct deposit on that end. But I really, again, we look at leaders, and again, I go back to Google and I go back to searching what a leaders, and it's taking a group to the top. This is one that type in leadership into Google again, and this is one of the top images that you see. So it's not about the back of the check and signing. A leader is somebody defined by our good friends at Google as someone that leads. So we're going to look at a little bit about the different generations and their leadership styles and see which one is focused about taking currently a group up to the top. So there's 4 different leadership styles of these different generations. Defined by the McGirdle group, the silent generation is controlling. And a control approach to leadership is the authoritative in nature and uses a top-down approach. So you're seeing that area in this graph. You'll see where there is a hierarchy and you're seeing a direct approach down to people below it. Boomers are more the directive style. It incorporates a high degree of focus on task and a degree of employee-manager relationship. So you start to see where the information starts to go down and they're directing. They're not just, again, controlling that previous generation, but starting to direct. But what happens when we get into Generation X? They're starting to get into a controlling style of leadership, which is a combo of the two above. It's a combo of controlling and directing, but a good leader is able to coordinate his followers to a credible mission statement. So we know the other 3 snapshots of the generation. What about these millennials? What are we seeing in their leadership style? It's defined by the McGirdle group as guiding. It is similar to what we've seen. It's a combination of part direct, part coordinating with the ability to guide a group of people and inspire a movement of change. It's not just, as we've seen with coordinating, where it's directing and coordinating down to another area across a wide spectrum, but it's the coordinating, the guiding, the being a part of the process through there. So let's go back to some myths about these millennial leaders. So if they're focused on guiding, what are some of the myths that we're seeing out there with them? Well, millennial leaders aren't loyal. Well, this graph that you have in front of you shows the plans to stay with current employer. because you're seeing a graph. The green represents other generations and the millennials. Well, look at that. Millennials are actually, over a period of time, if you were to survey them and say, how long are you going to stay with your existing company? Millennials actually are going to be more loyal over a longer period of time. And even in the initial, there's a period, there's a balance right here in the middle, but for the most part, they are going to be loyal. And this is done by Richard Wellis and Robert Way, and they show that the fact that they are just as loyal, if not in some areas, slightly more loyal than other generations. What about the other one? So they're loyal. They're loyal to your company. Millennial leaders are. But the question might come up as, well, if they're loyal, they just want to run the company. Well, this is a millennial leader's expectation of how long it's going to take them to be in charge. And it's 23.2 years if you add up all those areas from the period of when they first level to their expectation of C-suite employees. So that myth of that they just want to run the company, it's not true. Their average is 23.2 years. And how does that look when you dive into the data of this? So this is the last 5 years, the average age of CEOs and CFOs on the S&P 500. So what you're seeing is the orange line represents CFO, blue line represents CEO, and the gray line is just a flat 48 across the period. So if you take the average age of college graduates and you take the 23.2 years it takes them to their expectation of CEO, puts them at 48 years when the expectation is that they'll be in charge of the company. Not very far off the CFO area, and not very, I mean, it's a little bit further off when you look at the CEO, but again, the millennial expectation that we just want to be at the top, data doesn't show that. And when you compare it to what we're seeing in S&P 500. So you're like, oh, Jim, but they don't want to really work for a company. Millennials want to be the next Mark Zuckerberg. They want to be in their dorm room at Harvard, designing Facebook and creating that. But if you look at the data of the average startup, it's 40 years old. It's not 22 with 6 to 10 plus years of experience. So it's that Generation X actually is the generation that you're starting to see that really wants and drives to be the startup. So, you know, I want to give Dr. Matt McGuire time, but, you know, in what I like to say with millennial leaders, if you look at this, look at the timeline. They're not trying to be just the next CEO. They're loyal to your company. They're going to guide and they're going to be a part of that. But if you look at the three, and this is Alex Valentini that did a dissertation paper on this, and I've always felt like these three areas truly define the millennial leader generation. They're guiding. They want to be informed on changes and to seek to know a purpose of what they're doing. Inclusiveness. They want a voice in the decisions. Again, they're guiding other people and being guided by their leader. They want frequent feedback both ways. They're able to get information, so they're seeking feedback all the time. And then fairness. I think everybody would agree that this is becoming more and more popular, but integrity and concerns of others. I mean, I really feel like this generation and the leaders within this focus on these three skills: guiding, inclusiveness, and fairness, which are good core values for most people. And I'll pause and just say, we have to thank the other generations. We all have our differences. We all have our different styles, but without the other generation, man, we would be good to go. So I'm going to stop sharing and say thank you for listening to my portion, and then we're going to give Dr. Mac McGuire a moment, and then we'll have Q&A. So Dr. Mac, I stopped sharing, so the ability for you to share should be on your end now.
Jim is right. There's a lot of conflicting information. Now, what I like to use, again, I'm a baby boomer. So what I like to use, I'm born in 51, is I like to use, and I'm going to probably go full screen here just so you can see these slides really well and minimize everything else. So the Pew Research Center is one of the ones that I love to use, and we have the generations defined. Now, as you can see there on the age, over there on the right side, and you can read that faster than I do. I'm a baby boomer. We're on our way out. The silent generation is going to be gone about 2033, starting to fade and go to 2036, be gone. The boomer generation about 2055, we're going to be out of here. The millennial is starting to take over, again, different figures than what Jim has in millions. And here's an interesting slide about the boomers and the Gen Xers. You know, a lot of people say that the baby boomers are not keeping up, and but you can see here that the silent generation and the baby boomers have kept up with some technology in some ways. And then I want to go to this slide about the generational differences. And this is, again, the Pew Research Center 2018 is the latest information. They're even calling this next generation is going to be the COVID generation, they believe. Now, the Generation Y for Pew, they say the Generation Y, millennials, are synonymous, they're the same ones. I think it's interesting to see that we still have almost 11,000 people between the ages of 75 to 95 that are still in the workforce. And the baby boomers obviously have stayed in the workforce a long time. The generation that's been hurt the most by is the Generation X. Harvard Business School did a research article, and they found out that about 15% of those Generation X's achieved what they could have achieved if the baby boomers would have gotten out of their way. And then the Generation Z, the Post-Millennials, is what the Pew Research Center is calling that. Again, there's different titles for all of this. So I want to kind of bring you this about, you can read it faster than I can read it. The silent generation, some of their keys, as you see here, they deserve loyalty. Job changing is a negative, and it has a negative stigma, which we're going to see later on. Obviously, that's not the case. And then the feedback was no news is good news. Bosses didn't talk to anybody. Their influences were obviously the wars that we had, but they had a strong faith in God, and it was used to form an ethical base with moral principles. Then we go to the boomers, the baby boomers, 56, 74, where I am at 69. And you can see what was happening with that group. They are very optimistic. That's why they kind of stayed in the workforce, because they love to have a career and something to do. They like to retire 2 or 3 times. And they have been much better off than the last generation. Now, feedback, they'd like to hear you tell them how well they did at least once a year, but it's not really a requirement. Then the next one is Gen X. And so Gen X, you can see the divorce rate tripled. That has been a significant factor. Another factor that was in another report talked about the fact that Gen Xers have moved away from the grandparents, who were the imprinters of right and wrong for grandchildren, and formed an alliance against parents with the children. So you can see there the values. They want a portable career and enjoy life. Now, this has had a significant impact in healthcare, because I work with the Quality Texas Foundation. We give the governor's award for the best healthcare in the state. And we give the best award for education, not-for-profit, for-profit, manufacturing, etc., through our processes. And we see here that they are very suspect of religion. So now we start to break from religion. And if you look up the definition of ethics as an example, it has a moral component to it. And without some religious base, some knowledge of right and wrong, perhaps a strong knowledge with a conscience, we start to lose some of the ethics that we may have worked with very strongly before. Now, job changing is necessary. And then we get to the Gen Y, millennials, and the Pew throws those together. And you can see about this technology. You know, when I got a smart TV the other day from Best Buy, and luckily I had a 12-year-old from across the street come and fix it for me. Now, the young man at Best Buy said, this smart TV, anybody can set it up. And I said, son, that's not true. And I kind of played it up a little bit, but technology is a little scary for some of my generation. Now, Gen Y millennials think about parallel careers. They think about working for you, but all along they're thinking about starting a business of some kind. They want electronic and social media evaluation. I worry about what would have happened to our country if we had COVID-19 happen without the millennials being able to help us make the transition to home. Now, Gen Z is what they're calling the post-millennials now, according to Pew. Again, there's all different kinds of names and ages, but one of their values there is no religion. Churches, if this is true, churches in the future are going to be drastically impacted, and religious institutions, and they want to be the boss in a short order. And most of them, through surveys, say that most of the 19 to 24 say that they only want to work for a millennial. They don't want to work for anybody older than that. And now the parents, grandparents are not in contact because we're moving across the country, moving to different places. And we're having a lack of grandparent influence, which has been proven to be very significant. And the last thing I was going to show you is the new folks and what they're coming with, the Gen Z, this post-millennials, and you can read some of the information there. This information is a part of our training that we give for our leadership development program that we have. So I'll stop the sharing and maybe ask for questions.
Thanks, Dr. Mack. Yeah, I won't ask a question, but I'll just kind of agree with you as a co-presenter that you can find different ways to define every generation. And as you look at the next generation that's starting to enter that workplace, the COVID generation, what they're looking for, their expectations, how much each generation influences the next one, you know, how millennials were influenced by Gen X divorce rates, what they were influenced on there. So all those different factors that go in there. So I appreciate you co-presenting with me. And I'll say since I can see everybody, if you have a question for either one of us, simply raise your hand or unmute yourself, and we would love to answer some questions. You got some diverse approach to this and some people that are passionate about it, but love to see if there's any questions from anybody on this topic. Can't believe y'all are, for a lunch and learn, Steve, they're this quiet, you know?
Hey, Dr. Mack, I have a question for you. So currently in the workplace, COVID-19 has presented the ability to work from home. And for people and families that maybe didn't have a good work-life balance to have maybe obtained that because it's blended. Is there been any research to show the impact that the work from home has had on the industry and specifically to generations? I mean, I feel like sometimes those of us that work from home, we work more. But is there any updates or comments on that you'd like to make?
Excuse me, yes. Harvard Business School did a 6-month study about COVID-19 and the impact that it's had. And what they found out in several different organizations is they found out they had a 15% increase in customer satisfaction. And so the millennials are asking for tasks now. If I'm going to work from home, give me tasks. Now, my generation will say, you know, you need to work 7:30 to 4:30. Well, that's not true anymore. And to your point, Kat, we're seeing that a 10 to 12 to even 15% increase in the number of hours that you spend. And you're saving the time. One of the survey findings was amazing about the fact that it takes me an hour to get to work. And I'm so upset when I get to work that I'm mad at everybody who is at work. And so we take away that hour, we take about the hour of going home. And so, you know, my generation and the organizations I work with say, you know, I was on a call this morning, they said, when can we go back? And the answer is we're not ever going back. Because when we see performance improve, when you see Twitter and Google and all these other places say, you know, we're not going back, we're going back half staff. Now, this is incumbent upon the leaders to develop an accountability so that I can make sure that Nick is doing what Nick is supposed to do. And I'm going to give him these 8, 9, 10 tasks, and he needs to get those 10 tasks done. Now, if Nick can do it in 4 hours, I have to get over caring about it. I just want the 10. So the leadership development, we have a new leadership development program that we have 7.0. We've updated it. This will be our 7th time. And it's laced with all the new research about COVID-19 from the Hudson Institute, the Hoover Institution, Stanford, the Kellogg School, Harvard Business School, Sloan, MIT. Now, there's one caveat to all that. If you have small children at home, if you have other people at home, then the people are not working as much, and they may have a 20% decrease in some cases. So if you have distractions at home, leaders are going to have to try to ascertain, are the distractions so much that we can't make it? But some of the Fortune 500 companies now are building offices in homes for the people so that they can stay home, and they're reaping huge profits and benefits from that. So it's going to be something that the generations are going to have to work with, but COVID-19 has given us the opportunity to work from home, to your point about the work-life balance. And we have doctors now that are saying, you know, we tell a lot of our hospitals are saying, you know, young doctors, you've got to work sometime in the emergency room. And they said, no, I'm not. They said, well, yeah, but everybody did that. And they said, no, your generation did that. That's why you see on the weekend, we have what? Hospitalists. Because the doctors are not coming to the hospital. They don't have to. They're making their $250,000, $350,000, and they have a life on the weekend. And that's what has given hospitalists the opportunity to, because they only want to work on the weekend. Let me stop there.
I have a follow-up question to that. So when you work in proximity to other people, there's a huge ability to, I'll let the siren go by, sorry. There's a huge ability to learn from just situational awareness and other conversations happening and micro conversations that happen among people. So how do you foresee that being, I don't know, like, how do you foresee that gap being filled by people who are working at their home and don't get that kind of interaction?
Yeah, especially for the extroverts. I mean, I'm an extrovert. We work from home. My wife and I'm the CEO, she's the COO. And every once in a while, I got to break free and go to HEB, you know, so I can go talk to somebody. I can't hug anybody anymore because we're both big huggers. I can't hug anybody. I can elbow, you know, or fist them. But, you know, so what is going to happen is that we're going to have these periodic times, and this is what the research is showing, to where we all come together. And I ask Allison, what did you learn? Carol, what did you learn today? Nate, what did you learn today? And we're going to have this, Baldrige calls that organizational knowledge, and how we share that information. And so it's going to be incumbent upon us to schedule a time when we can all come back together again and have our documentation ready and have our ideas ready so that we can talk about those, because you are talking about a serious threat to our team building, to our culture, and things like that. And so organizations are going to have to work with that and try to mitigate the negativity that can bring.
Yeah. And Brian, I'll piggyback off that too. Two things that I've seen is, you know, the event and industry, the large conferences that used to be that you'd have, hey, fly into Dallas for a 1.5 day meeting. Those are going to stay virtual in some component, but you're going to see organizations, large companies come together for longer periods of time. Opposed to a 3-day conference, you might see a 2-week conference, because they're really going to use that maximability of time to have what I would call purposeful casualness. You know, it's the water cooler talk. It's those things that you do that, as Dr. Mack said, it's the exchange of ideas, but sometimes the best exchange of ideas are the indirect conversations when you're what you would quote unquote call the water cooler talk. And there's some data out there about, as much as you're scheduling daily Zoom calls with your employees, the schedule periodic Zoom calls with no work agenda, where it might be a little goofy, but it creates that casualness so that you're not, as you get more efficient, you don't want to be so efficient that the 45-minute Zoom call is only business and there's no personability. And then through the casualness leads to innovation and ideas on that. So you're starting to see some of that trends as well, what I'm reading.
And Jim, like, how do you, as things start going back to the way they were, or not the way they were, but to maybe a more physical presence for a business such as the Chamber, do you maybe foresee some type of like hybrid where maybe people work from home a few days a week and come into the location a few days a week?
Not with that many employees on the call, I won't say anything. No, but I think you're going to see that. I think the data, as Dr. Mack said, the data is showing that there are people that are much more efficient working from home. And I mean, think about your two most expensive operating costs. It's salary and wages. And then it's, having a physical building. I mean, even JCPenney's, closing their building down. Now, I don't know if JCPenney's will be around much longer, but they foreclosed on their corporate headquarters up in the DFW area because they don't need to be in the office at that level anymore. So I think you probably will see organizations figure out that. I think people are realizing what employees can be just as productive, if not more productive, in a remote environment. And some people it works well for, and some people they don't want to have that any desire and still want a physical space. And I think Dr. Mack's right. You're seeing companies build offices. It's less expensive for me to build a office within your home than it is for me to have a 50,000 square foot office space with that, so I think you're going to see a combo. And if Dr. Mack, you have anything to add to that comment?
Yeah, the number one thing that is being put in homes right now are two offices. That is the number one thing. Now, one of them is called a bedroom, but it's an office bedroom combination. There's one at the front and there's one at the back so that you can be separated with some distance as far as you can get away from your significant other. So there's also this opportunity for us to improve our processes significantly by having these agenda calls, is kind of like Jim was talking about. You should never have a Zoom call that you don't have an agenda. Now, if we want to have an agenda just to say for 15 minutes, we're going to freewheel here and we're just going to talk about what is the most important thing we've done this week, that's fine. But Zoom and efficiency, my PhD is in organizational behavior and leadership. Efficiency would tell you that we cannot have a meeting at any time without an agenda and a time that's assigned to that. Not a time that's hardcore, we got to stop now, but an agenda set up so that we can get the information that we need to get.
A different question. You mentioned, Dr. Mack, about that managers need to let go of the 8 to 5 hour mentality and transition to more of a task oriented space. Right. Sadly, probably a lot of job descriptions and organizational structures are maybe built around broader topics than task, assignment. Do you have any strategies or tips and tricks that we could take away today to either, if we're having to task manage staff from far away, or just as those things continue to be more prevalent, that you might be able to help us understand more clearly with?
Yes, this has caused strategic planning to be an imperative. No longer now can strategic planning be an option, both organizational and personal. Let me tell you this, if you do not have a personal strategic plan, you're wrong. You're just wrong. And if you don't have an organizational strategic plan that prioritizes your work, one of the things that Harvard Business School found out in looking at about 180 or 185 of the Fortune 200 that they kind of selected, they took a look at that and they found out that 70% of the information they collect is worthless. We have a new class coming up in March where we're talking about, how do you determine what you measure? And so it's going to be incumbent upon us, Kat, to have a strategic plan, an organizational strategic plan, all the way down to the worker level that lets me know if I'm not going to do anything else, I'm going to do these 2, 3, 5 things. And I'm going to do them every day, and I'm going to do them really well. And if I get some other things added to my list, fine, but we have to know what the priorities are. Now, this is going to really stress leadership out. Because if we don't have a really good strategic plan, we don't know what the priorities are. And so it's kind of like Eisenhower on D-Day, one of his famous quotes. He said, having a strategic plan is stupid, but doing strategic planning is critical. So we've got to have a plan, but don't get so caught up that you made a plan that's a masterpiece that's not going to change, because stuff's going to happen, does it not? And so we've got to have your personal strategic plan. You got to have, and I'll work with any of you on a personal strategic plan if you want to go that route. But you've got to have an organizational plan so that I know that customer service, as an example, is number one. So if you're at home and you're working for me, I expect you to pick up that phone all day long and answer a customer service request. And I've got to have a way to track that. I've got to have a way to understand if you're doing that or not. But again, in some cases, the research has shown a 15% increase. Who wouldn't want a 15% increase in customer satisfaction, which translates to large dollars, and also in employee engagement? So it's here. And we're going to have to embrace it. And my generation is going to be the one pushing back. I just got off another phone call yesterday with a baby boomer. He said, these young people are killing me. They're killing me. I said, well, I understand. He said, they've got to change. And I said, oh, no, you're the one that's going to have to change. And I'm one of you, and I'm going to have to change too. And it's not that it's right or wrong, but with 50%, at least on some studies, some higher, of millennials in the workforce, it's really dumb for leaders not to adjust somewhat. Now, we can't give away the farm. You know, we can't allow millennials to go home and do what they want to do. It has to be under the umbrella of what we need to get done. But the clarity around that is a real leadership challenge today.
Well, I can't thank you and Jim enough, because this has been a tremendously helpful lunch and learn, both for me professionally and hopefully for the rest of the audience. I know you kind of have a tight schedule, so we really appreciate your time. And I'm guessing, just given your outreach, that if anybody would like to connect, they can reach out to Allison or Jim, and they can help facilitate that connection. So
Kat, I just want to say again to Dr. McGuire, if you're not familiar with Quality Texas Foundation, I had the pleasure of going through, it's probably the most introduction to the Baldrige process. I mean, but over 2 or 3, I think it was 3 days of intense conversations. You will look at your organization in a whole different light. It is a commitment for you to go through it. But if you haven't had the chance, as Allison sends out the post survey, we'll include information in the survey to the Quality Texas Foundation and Dr. McGuire's information, because I would highly encourage all of y'all to take a look at that organization. You know, Georgetown's lucky that we have, for the nonprofits, the William County Centers for Nonprofit Excellence focus on nonprofits, but from a business side and for-profit or a nonprofit, Quality Texas Foundation is the way to go, guys, and I would highly support that on that end. So thank you, Dr. Mack.
Thank you, Jim.
Turn it back to you, Kat.
Okay, well, Allison, do we have any virtual door prizes this go around? No, potentially random bags of flour or cookies could appear at people's doors. Well, I want to thank y'all for hanging with Steve and I during 2020. We're excited about an exciting chamber upcoming. I know there's a couple chamber announcements, I believe. So Allison, any updates that you'd like to share?
I don't have anything. Jim, do you have anything that you want to share?
You know, guys, this is really our last event of the year. We thank you for participating in the Chamber's virtual program. We will continue to monitor everything that's taking place and look at future events. Normally the week prior on a Monday, if we will be 100% virtual or a hybrid model, will be sent out as part of the communications. Looking forward to a great program starting in January, breakfast links with newly elected Mayor Josh Schrader giving our annual State of the City, and lunch and learn, a COVID conversation, and more information to come out on that, guys. But we understand your businesses have a lot of choices and a lot of places to support and be a part of, and we thank you from the bottom of our hearts for supporting us this year. We'll continue to facilitate your economic success, whether virtually, hybrid, or in person, but you know what? More information to come. Thank you guys so much for having a great day. And I'll say thank you, Steve and Kat. Steve, I'm not closing the meeting, but Steve and Kat, thank you so much for being our Lunch and Learn chairs. And Steve, you raised your hand, so you're on screen now.
Just wanted to echo those words. Thanks everybody for coming. But at the end, tomorrow or sometime, Allison always sends out the survey. So please fill out the survey.
Tens.